Good evening, everyone. Welcome to your first bedtime psychology class with Living-ology. No need to sit up straight, no notes required. Just settle into your bed, get cozy under the covers, fluff your pillow if you need to, and let's chat like old friends. Over the next 120 minutes, we're going to take it really slow geeking out over psychology basics in a way that's calm, easy to follow, and so gentle, it'll lull you into a restful sleep while you learn. Think of this as brain nourishment with a side of drowsiness. We'll unpack how our brains work. Spoiler, it's chaos, but organized chaos, like a messy but functional closet. Why we do the weird things we do, like scrolling TikTok when we should be sleeping, or craving snacks at 10 p.m. even if we're not hungry. And how this stuff actually boosts your life, knowledge, and cognitive skills all while your body eases into that perfect pre-sleep state. Unlike those hyper-specialized courses that feel like homework looking at you, clinical psychology of goldfish, tonight's all about building a base gently with zero pressure. We'll cover psychology's history, key theories, biology and behavior, thinking processes, emotions, social influence, and even a little bit about individual differences with a tiny 10% nod to sleep science, just to tie it all together and keep you on track for sweet dreams. This isn't a guided nap session, but it's designed so you can learn, grow, and drift off whenever your body's ready. No need to stay awake for every word. Your brain will soak up the good stuff even if your eyes are closed. Let's kick off with a super simple question. What even is psychology, anyway? At its core, it's the scientific study of the mind and behavior, but let's keep it chill. No textbook jargon here. The mind is all the invisible stuff. Your thoughts, feelings, memories, that quiet voice judging you for eating the last cookie, the little daydream you had about vacation while you were brushing your teeth. Behavior is the stuff people can see, from a tiny eye roll when someone says something cheesy, to planning a wedding, to scrolling through your phone. We've all been there. What's cool about psychology, especially for bedtime learning, is that it connects these two worlds, the inner and outer you, and every bit you learn boosts your cognitive toolkit. It helps you understand yourself better. Why do I procrastinate so much? And others better. Why does my friend always need to be early to everything? Which makes daily life smoother and less stressful. Unlike philosophy, where folks sit around debating what is consciousness, over wine and fancy cheese way too stimulating for bedtime, psychology is all about easy to grasp, real-world insights. We'll take it step by step, no guesswork, just laid-back facts that stick in your brain, even if you nod off halfway through. Think of it like planting seeds while you sleep. They'll grow into knowledge without you lifting a finger. 1. The history of psychology, from philosophers yelling to calm science. To get why modern psychology is the way it is, we gotta take a gentle trip back in time, way back, before lab coats, brain scanners, and even electricity, when people just sat around under trees or in marketplaces and thought deeply perfect bedtime vibes, right? No screens, no distractions, just quiet reflection. For thousands of years, smart folks from all over the world have asked the same low-key, fascinating questions. What's this consciousness thing that makes me me? How do we learn new things? And why do we forget some stuff instantly but remember song lyrics from 10 years ago? Are we born with certain traits like being shy or outgoing, or do life experiences shape us into who we are? These questions aren't new. Ancient Greeks debated them while chowing down on olives, bread, and wine. Just like we're chatting now, minus the wine. Probably save that for a weekend evening. Two of the biggest names in this ancient debate are Plato and Aristotle. They're like the OG drama queens of psychology, and their ideas still boost our cognitive understanding today, even 2,000 plus years later. Plato, Socrates' star student and one of the most influential thinkers of all time, thought the mind and body were two separate things, like a phone and its case. The phone mind, soul is the important part, and the case body is just a temporary container. He called this idea dualism, and he took it a step further. He believed we're born with all the knowledge we'll ever have. Our souls, he said, existed in a perfect world before we were born, where we knew everything, math, philosophy, right from wrong. So learning, to Plato, is just remembering stuff we forgot when we were born. It's like having a hard drive preloaded with data, but you have to dig around to find the files. Aristotle, Plato astute, and the total realist, was like, nah, that's dumb. Let's be practical. He rejected dualism and embraced empiricism. the idea that knowledge comes from experience. He thought the mind was a blank slate tabula rasa. If you want to sound fancy, when we're born, and everything we learn comes from messing around with the world. Touching a hot stove, don't do that. Tasting a sweet strawberry, listening to a parent's voice. This fight between we're born with it nativism and we learn it empiricism is still going strong today. It's basically the psychology version of pineapple on pizza. Yes or no? Everyone has an opinion, and knowing both sides makes your thinking sharper, even as you relax into your bed. Jump ahead a few thousand years to the 1600s and 1700s, think bigwigs, fancy dresses, candlelight, and more. Mellow philosophical chatting, no yelling. Promise, we're keeping it bedtime friendly. René Descartes, a French philosopher and mathematician, he invented the coordinate plane, in case you forgot from math class. Doubled down on Plato's dualism. He said the mind and body chat through the pineal gland, a tiny, pea-sized part of the brain that's right in the middle. He thought this was the only part of the brain that wasn't split into two hemispheres, so it must be the bridge between mind and body. Descartes is also the guy who gave us the famous line, cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Deep, right, but not so stimulating that it'll keep you up. He was basically saying, the only thing I can be sure of is that I exist because I'm thinking about existing. John Locke, an English philosopher, was Team Aristotle all the way. He said every thought we have, every idea we form, comes from what we see, hear, touch, taste, or smell. He argued that there's no such thing as innate knowledge of an ideas, like good and bad are learned from our families and communities. These guys laid the groundwork for psychology, but it didn't become a real, calm science until the late 1800s when someone finally said, enough talking, let's do a gentle experiment instead of just debating. That someone was Wilhelm Wundt, the father of modern psychology. Sorry, no cool nickname, just Wilhelm, but we'll call him Willie for short to keep it casual. In 1879, Willie opened the first ever psychology lab in Leipzig, Germany, a tiny room with simple equipment, nothing fancy by today's standards. His whole vibe was structuralism, figuring out the basic building blocks of conscious experience, like how we perceive light, sound, or touch, but in a slow, methodical way that wouldn't stress anyone out. To do this, he used a method called introspection, but not the I'm so sad, why am I sad kind of introspection you do in the shower. Willie's introspection was super structured. He trained people for months, even years, to be objective observers of their own thoughts and feelings. They'd sit quietly in a dimly lit room, get exposed to a soft stimulus like a bell, a dim light, or a gentle touch, and then describe every thought, feeling, and sensation in extreme detail. No opinions, no emotions, just facts. Spoiler: this method is now considered about as scientific as reading tea leaves or guessing your horoscope. Why? Because everyone's inner experience is different. What feels warm to one person might feel hot to another, and you can't measure that objectively. But here's the thing: Willie's lab was a game changer. It turned psychology from philosophy with extra steps into a real, systematic study, one that used experiments, controls, and data instead of just words. Knowing that adds a layer to your life knowledge. Psychology didn't just pop out of nowhere, it evolved slowly, just like you do when you're learning something new. Willie's student, Edward Titchener, brought structuralism to the United States, but it didn't last long. Enter William James, the father of American psychology and all-around chill legend. James was a Harvard professor, a writer, and a total free spirit. He once took a 2-year break from school because he was bored. Relatable. He thought structuralism was useless. Who cares about the building blocks of the mind if we don't know what the mind actually does? What's the point of knowing how we perceive a bell if we don't know why we care about the bell in the first place? James started a new school of thought called functionalism, which focused on how mental processes help us survive and adapt to our environment. Super practical stuff that boosts your daily cognitive skills. James said consciousness isn't a bunch of separate parts, like Legos. It's a continuous stream, like a Netflix show you can't pause, or a river flowing gently downstream. Perfect bedtime analogy. You don't experience life in little bits. You experience it as one long, connected story. His 1890 book, The Principles of Psychology, is still a classic though. Fair warning, it's 1,200 pages long, weighs a ton, and is about as easy to read as a textbook written in Latin. No need to read it, we're giving you the cliff notes right before bed in a way that won't make your eyes cross. James also had some wild but cool ideas about emotions. We'll talk more about that later, but one of his best contributions was making psychology accessible. He didn't want it to be a stuffy academic subject only for professors. He wanted it to be useful for everyday people. That's exactly what we're doing here, making psychology useful, calm, and easy to absorb while you drift off. Imagine William James sitting next to your bed, chatting softly about the mind. No pressure, no jargon, just good conversation. That's the vibe we're going for. The early 1900s brought some big shifts to psychology, none bigger than behaviorism, which is all about easy to grasp, observable stuff, perfect for bedtime since it doesn't require overthinking. Behaviorists looked at all the talk about consciousness and inner thoughts and said, nope, we're only studying what we can see behavior, the rest is just guesswork. They thought every behavior we have, from brushing our teeth to having a conversation to scrolling TikTok, is learned from our environment. No exceptions. No innate traits, no unconscious desires, just stimulus and response. The big names here are Ivan Pavlov, B.F. Skinner, and John Watson. Their ideas are simple, memorable, and great for boosting your understanding of how habits form, including sleep habits. Bonus, let's start with Ivan Pavlov, a Russian physiologist who accidentally invented classical conditioning while studying dogs and digestion. Boring. I know, perfect for inducing drowsiness. Pavlov was trying to figure out how saliva helps with digestion, so he'd feed dogs and measure how much they salivated. But he noticed something weird. After a few days, the dogs would start salivating before he even gave them food, when they heard his footsteps, when they saw his lab coat, even when they heard the sound of the food bowl being prepared. Pavlov was like, that's not supposed to happen. So he decided to test it. He rang a bell every time he fed the dogs. At first, the bell meant nothing to the dogs, just a random noise. But after a few weeks of pairing the bell with food, the dogs would salivate just at the sound of the bell, even when there was no food. The bell went from a neutral stimulus random noise to a conditioned stimulus signal for food, and salivating at the bell became a conditioned response. It's like training your brain to associate one thing with another without even trying. Imagine if every time you heard your bedtime playlist start, you got cozy under the covers, turned off your phone, and took a deep breath. Soon, your brain would associate that music with relaxation. You'd start to feel drowsy just hearing the first note without having to force it. That's classical conditioning at work, and we're low-key training your brain right now just by you listening to this lecture before bed. Every time you pair this calm voice with sleep, your brain makes that connection stronger, and soon, just pressing play will help you relax. That's the power of behaviorism. It's not just theory, it's a tool you can use tonight. Next up, B.F. Skinner, the king of operant conditioning and a total weirdo, but in a good way. Skinner was obsessed with how consequences shape behavior. What happens after you do something determines whether you'll do it again. He invented a device called the Skinner box, creative name, I know. A small box with a lever, a food dispenser, and sometimes a speaker or a light. He'd put a rat or a pigeon in the box, and when the animal pressed the lever, it would get a food pellet, a reward. Soon, the animal would press the lever non-stop because it learned that pressing the lever leads to food. Skinner called this positive reinforcement, touting something good to increase a behavior, but he didn't stop there. He also studied negative reinforcement, taking away something bad to increase a behavior, positive punishment, adding something bad to decrease a behavior, and negative punishment, taking away something good to decrease a behavior. Let's break these down with sleep-friendly examples so they stick. Positive reinforcement is giving yourself something good for doing a sleep-friendly behavior, like wrapping yourself in a cozy blanket, your favorite one, the soft one, for turning off your phone 30 minutes early. Negative reinforcement is taking away something bad, like not having to worry about insomnia, the worst if you stick to a consistent bedtime routine. Positive punishment is adding something bad for staying up late, like a strain from scrolling TikTok or a headache from staring at a screen. Negative punishment is taking away something good, like no more late night snacks, your favorite chips, the chocolate ones, if you stay up past your bedtime. Pro tip, reinforcement is always about increasing behavior. Punishment is about decreasing it. Positive means adding something, negative means taking away. Got it. Good. This stuff works for kids, pets, and your own sleep habits, using operant conditioning to build a consistent bedtime routine will make your nights more restful and your days sharper. That's the power of learning while you sleep. Knowledge that improves your life immediately without any extra effort. Then there's John Watson, the most extreme behaviorist of the bunch. He was like the no-nonsense, my way or the highway guy of psychology. Watson hated the idea of studying consciousness so much that he once said, "Psychology as the behaviorist views it is a purely objective experimental branch of natural science. Its theoretical goal is the prediction and control of behavior. Introspection forms no essential part of its methods." In other words, we don't care what you're thinking, we care what you're doing. Watson was also famous for his little Albert experiment, which is now considered unethical for good reason. He took a 9-month-old baby named Albert who was scared of loud noises but not of white rats, and every time Albert touched the rat, Watson made a loud noise behind his head. After a few times, Elba started to cry every time he saw the rat. He'd learned to associate the rat with the scary noise. Watson even showed that Albert's fear generalized to other white, fuzzy things. Rabbits, dogs, even a Santa Claus mask. The experiment showed how phobias can form through classical conditioning, but it's also a reminder that psychology has come a long way. We no longer experiment on babies or anyone without consent. Watson was also the guy who once said he could take any healthy baby, regardless of their background, and train them to be a doctor, a criminal, a circus clown, or anything else just by controlling their environment. Bold claim, Watson. Bold and probably wrong claim, but it's a fun story to drift off to, and it shows just how extreme behaviorism got. Behaviorism ruled psychology for decades, from the 1920s to the 1950s, because it was simple, objective, and easy to test. But people started to push back gently, because it ignored the stuff going on in our heads. If you only study what people do, you miss half the story. For example, if someone is scared of flying, behaviorism would say they learned that fear through conditioning, but it doesn't explain why some people get over that fear easily while others don't. It doesn't explain thoughts like, "I know flying is safe, but I still feel scared." In the 1950s and 60s, the cognitive revolution happened. Psychologists said, "Hey, we need to talk about the mind again, but calmly. We can't ignore what's going on inside people's heads anymore." Cognitive psychology looks at the mind like a computer one that glitches a lot, forgets files, and sometimes crashes. Relatable, right? Cognitive psychologists study how we take in information input, store it hard drive, and use it output, skills that directly boost your cognitive abilities. They borrowed ideas from computer science, linguistics, and neuroscience, and suddenly we were talking about attention, memory, problem solving, and decision making, all stuff that makes daily life easier. It's like behaviorism was the black and white TV of psychology, and cognitive psychology was the color, upgrade softer, richer, and more useful. One of the founding fathers of cognitive psychology was Ulrich Neisert, who wrote the first textbook on cognitive psychology in 1967. He said cognitive psychology is the study of how people perceive, learn, remember, and think about information, simple but powerful. Neisert also emphasized that cognition is not just a passive process like a computer waiting for input. It's an active process. We don't just take in information, we interpret it, organize it, and make sense of it. That's why two people can see the same event and remember it differently. We all have different ways of processing information. Around the same time the cognitive revolution was happening, humanistic psychology popped up, reacting to both behaviorism and psychoanalysis, which we'll get to in a minute. Humanists like Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers thought behaviorism was too cold and mechanical, treating people like rats in a box without any free will or individuality. They thought psychoanalysis was too focused on the past and on unconscious weirdness, ignoring the fact that people can grow and change. So they started a new perspective that focused on the positive side of human nature: growth, self-actualization, and personal freedom. Maslow and Rogers believed that everyone has an innate drive to grow, learn, and become their best selves, like a plant reaching for the sun. They said psychology shouldn't just be about fixing problems like phobias or depression. It should be about helping people thrive. Abraham Maslow is famous for his hierarchy of needs, a pyramid that shows what we need to thrive. At the bottom of the pyramid are physiological needs: food, water, shelter, sleep, basic stuff we can't live without. Above that are safety needs, feeling safe and secure, having a stable home, a steady job. Next are love and belonging needs, friendships, family, romantic relationships, feeling connected to others. Then esteem needs, feeling good about yourself, having confidence, being respected by others. At the top of the pyramid is self-actualization, becoming the best version of yourself, pursuing your passions, and living a meaningful life. Maslow said, you can't reach the top of the pyramid until you've met the needs at the bottom. You can't focus on self-actualization if you're hungry, homeless, or sleep-deprived. That's why sleep is so important. It's the foundation of everything else. This hierarchy is everywhere now. You'll see it in business books, parenting blogs, even self-help podcasts. Knowing it helps you understand what you and others need to thrive and why you might feel off if you're not sleeping well. It's not just that you're tired. You're not meeting a basic physiological need, which throws everything else off. Carl Rogers, another humanistic legend, focused on unconditional positive regard, a fancy way of saying love and accept someone for who they are, flaws and all. Rogers was a therapist, and he believed that the key to helping people grow is to create a safe, non-judgmental space where they can be themselves. He said that when people feel accepted, not just loved, when they're good, they're more likely to be honest with themselves, make better choices, and grow. This applies to yourself too. If you're hard on yourself for not sleeping well, I'm so lazy, I can't even stick to a bedtime, you're not giving yourself unconditional positive regard. Instead, try saying, I'm struggling to sleep right now, and that's okay. I'm doing my best, and I'll keep trying. That kindness to yourself reduces stress, which makes it easier to sleep. Win-win. Humanistic psychology is basically the warm hug of psychology. It reminds us that we're not just robots or lab rats. We're humans with feelings, dreams, and the ability to grow. This isn't just knowledge, it's life wisdom you can absorb while you relax into your bed. Today, psychology is a total mix of all these perspectives, eclectic, just like our brains. Modern psychologists don't pick one team and stick to it. They borrow from everywhere, depending on what they're studying. Want to understand a phobia? Use classical conditioning behaviorism to see how it formed, brain chemistry biological to see why it's hard to overcome, and how the person thinks about their fear, cognitive to help them change. Want to help someone with low self-esteem? Use humanistic principles, unconditional positive regard to build their confidence, and operant conditioning, positive reinforcement to encourage positive self-talk. It's messy, it's complicated, but that's what makes it useful. No single theory explains everything, why we cry at sad movies, why we procrastinate, why we love our pets more than some humans, but learning all the lenses makes your cognitive skills sharper, even if you're half asleep. This is the beauty of bedtime learning. You're boosting your brain while your body rests, without any of the stress of studying. Two, key theoretical perspectives in psychology, bedtime-friendly edition. Now that we've gone through psychology's greatest hits slowly, calmly, with plenty of sleep-friendly analogies, let's break down the core theories psychologists still use today. Think of these as different pairs of glasses each. One lets you see behavior in a new way, and each one adds to your life knowledge. By the end, you'll be able to look at someone's weird habit, like hoarding socks, or always arriving 10 minutes early and go, oh, that's because of X theory. Impressing friends and boosting your cognitive toolkit, all from something you learned while falling asleep. We'll take it one perspective at a time, with lots of examples, so it's easy to follow, even as your eyes get heavy. 2.1 Psychoanalytic perspective, Freud's unconscious, shenanigans, no nightmares, promise. First up, Sigmund Freud, the guy who made everyone overthink their childhood, but will keep it light, silly, and G-rated so it doesn't mess with your sleep. Freud was an Austrian neurologist who lived in the late 1800s and early 1900s. He smoked 20 cigars a day, not great for his health, loved to analyze his patients and himself, and had some wild ideas that still spark debate today. He founded the psychoanalytic perspective, and his big controversial idea was that most of our behavior is driven by stuff we're not even aware of our unconscious mind. It's like having a secret roommate in your brain who's calling the shots, but they're super quiet, not disruptive, you don't even know they're there, but they're influencing every decision you make. Freud said this unconscious stuff is mostly made up of repressed thoughts, feelings, and desires, stuff we don't want to think about because it's scary, embarrassing, or goes against our moral code. He said these repressed feelings are shaped by what happened to us when we were kids, and when our conscious mind, the you know, and unconscious mind gently clash, we get stressed out, anxious, or develop weird habits. For example, let's say you had a bad experience with dogs when you were a kid. Maybe a big dog barked at you and scared up, but you don't remember it. Your conscious mind thinks, I just don't like dogs. But your unconscious mind is holding on to that scared feeling from childhood. Every time you see a dog, your unconscious mind freaks out a little, even if your conscious mind knows the dog is harmless. That's the unconscious at work. Knowing this helps you understand why you might have weird little habits or fears that don't make sense. They're not random. They're connected to stuff your brain is holding on to, even if you don't remember it. And that self-awareness is pure cognitive gold. It helps you be kinder to yourself instead of thinking, why am I so weird? Freud's personality theory is like a 3-person drama in your head, but it's more sitcom than thriller. The ID, ego, and superego. Let's meet the cast. The ID is the chaotic toddler of the group, born with it, only cares about instant gratification, no regard for rules, consequences, or anyone else. Want food, cry, want attention, scream, want to touch a hot stove, reach for it. The idea operates on the pleasure principle. It just wants to feel good right now, and it doesn't care about anything else. The superego is the strict parent of the group. It's the quiet voice in your head that says, you can't eat the entire cake, that's rude, or don't lie, that's wrong. It's all about morals, values, and societal norms, stuff you learn from your family, school, and culture. The superego operates on the moral principle. It wants you to be good and follow the rules, even if it makes you unhappy. The ego is the middleman, the peacemaker. It's a rational part of your personality that tries to keep the ID happy without making the superego mad. It operates on the reality principle. It looks at the world around you and figures out how to satisfy the ID's desires in a way that's socially acceptable and safe. For example, if the ID says, I want cake now, the superego says, no, cake is for dessert. The ego says, okay, we can have a slice of cake after dinner. That way, we get what we want and don't get in trouble. The ego's job is to keep the peace, and it's not easy. This little drama plays out in all of us every single day, even when we're sleeping, which is why we have weird dreams, according to Freud. Freud said dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. They're the way your unconscious mind communicates with your conscious mind while you sleep. He thought dreams are made up of 2 parts. Manifest content, what you actually dream about, like flying or being chased by a monster, and latent content, the hidden, unconscious meaning behind the dream, like a desire for freedom or fear of failure. For example, if you dream about being chased by a monster, Freud might say the monster is a repressed fear or feeling you're running from in real life. Is this true? Probably not. Most modern psychologists think dreams are just your brain processing information from the day or random neural activity. But it's fun to analyze your dreams before bed. Why did I dream about my high school math teacher last night? And it's a silly little way to engage your brain without stressing it out. Freud also came up with psychosexual development stages where kids focus their pleasure-seeking energy on different body parts. Yes, really, but we'll keep it G-rated, I promise. He said each stage is crucial for healthy personality development, and if you don't get through a stage right, you get fixated, stuck, acting like a kid from that stage, even when you're an adult. Let's go through them quickly, with silly examples so they're easy to remember. The oral stage 0 to 18 months is all about sucking, chewing, and biting. Babies explore the world with their mouths. Ever seen a baby put a toy in their mouth? Yep, that's the oral stage. A fixation here might lead to habits like smoking, chewing gum non-stop, talking too much, or even overeating, all oral behaviors. The anal stage, 18 months, 3 years, is all about potty training. Kids learn to control their bowels, and Freud said this is where they learn about self-control and authority. A fixation here might lead to being overly neat and organized and or attentive, or super messy and disorganized and explicit. The phallic stage, 3 to 6 years, is where kids start to have weird, innocent feelings about their parents, Boys might have a crush on their mom, Oedipus complex, girls on their dad, Electra complex. Freud said kids eventually get over this by identifying with the same-sex parent. Boys want to be like dad, girls like mom. A fixation here might lead to issues with relationships or self-esteem later in life. The latency stage 6. Puberty is a calm stage, kids. Focus on friends, school, and hobbies, and sexual feelings take a back seat. The genital stage, puberty adulthood, is where healthy sexual relationships develop and people learn to balance their own needs with others' needs. Is all this true? Let's be real, probably not. Freud was obsessed with sex, and he tried to explain everything through that lens, which is a little extreme. Most modern psychologists think his theories are too vague, too focused on sexuality, and not supported by evidence. But here's the thing. Freud gets credit for two big, important ideas that are still influential today. First, he was the first to say childhood experiences matter. What happens to us when we're little shapes who we are as adults. That's a given now, but back then, no one was talking about it. Second, he introduced the idea of the unconscious mind, that there's more to us than what we're aware of. Even if the mechanisms he proposed, like psychosexual stages, are wrong, the idea that our unconscious influences our behavior is still a core part of psychology. Today, psychodynamic theory, the updated version of psychoanalysis, still looks at unconscious stuff in childhood experiences, but it's less about sex, more about evidence, and more focused on relationships, like how your relationship with your parents affects your relationships now. It's like Freud's idea got a glow-up comber, more practical and perfect for bedtime. Absorbing this helps you connect the dots between your past and present, boosting your self-awareness and cognitive depth, even if you're half asleep. 2.2 Behavioral perspective, rewards, punishments, and Pavlov's dogs, sleep-friendly habits included. Next, let's circle back to behaviorism. The no-nonsense, show me the evidence. Perspective that's perfect for bedtime because it's simple and actionable. We talked about Pavlov, Skinner, and Watson earlier, but let's dive deeper into their ideas and how they apply to your sleep routine, because who doesn't want better sleep habits? Behaviorists don't care about your unconscious mind, your feelings, or your childhood. They only care about what you do and what happens after you do it. They say every behavior is learned from your environment, and you can change any behavior by changing its consequences. It's like training a dog, but for yourself, and it's way easier than it sounds. We already covered classical conditioning, Pavlov's dogs, but let's expand on how to use it for better sleep. Classical conditioning is all about associations, linking a neutral stimulus, something that doesn't mean anything, to a conditioned stimulus, something that triggers a response. For sleep, we want to link certain cues like your bed, your bedtime playlist, or a warm cup of tea to relaxation and drowsiness. Here's how to do it. Pick one or two things you only do before bed. No scrolling, no working, no watching TV in bed. For example, only listen to your bedtime playlist when you're getting ready to sleep. Only drink warm chamomile tea before bed. Only read a physical book, not a screen in bed. Over time, your brain will associate these things with sleep. When you turn on the playlist, your brain will go, "Oh, it's sleep time," and you'll start to feel drowsy. This is called sleep hygiene in fancy terms, but it's just classical conditioning. The key is to be consistent. Don't listen to your bedtime playlist while you're cleaning or driving, because that breaks the association. It might take a few weeks, but it works. Your brain is great at making these connections, even when you're not paying attention. Another example of classical conditioning in sleep. Have you ever noticed that you feel more tired in your own bed than in a hotel bed? That's because your bed is a conditioned stimulus for sleep. Your brain has associated it with rest for years. A hotel bed is a neutral stimulus. Your brain doesn't have that association yet, so it's harder to fall asleep. That's why bringing your own pillow or bedtime playlist to a hotel can help you bringing those conditioned stimuli with you, telling your brain, this is still sleep time, even if we're in a new place. Now, let's talk more about operant conditioning, Skinner's rats and pigeons, and how to use it to build better sleep habits. Operant conditioning is all about consequences. What happens after you behave a certain way determines whether you'll do it again. The 4 principles: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, negative punishment are easy to remember, and you can use them every night to train yourself to sleep better. Let's break down each one with more sleep-specific examples so you can start using them tonight. Positive reinforcement, adding something good to increase a sleep-friendly behavior. This is the most effective one, so start here. Examples. Give yourself a small reward for turning off your phone 30 minutes early, like a few minutes with your favorite cozy blanket, a square of dark chocolate, the good stuff, not the cheap kind, or a quick stretch session with soft music. Reward yourself for sticking to your bedtime, even if it's just saying, "Good job, I did it," to yourself. Positive self-talk is a reward too. The key is to make the reward immediate. Don't wait until the morning to reward yourself, because the connection between the behavior and the reward will be weaker. Do it right after you do the sleep-friendly behavior, and your brain will start to link that behavior with something good. Negative reinforcement, taking away something bad to increase the sleep-friendly behavior. Examples: if you stick to your bedtime routine, you won't have to deal with the stress of lying awake for hours. Insomnia is the bad thing we're taking away. If you turn off your phone early, you won't have to deal with eye strain, blue light exposure, or the anxiety of scrolling all bad things. Negative reinforcement is powerful because we're wired to avoid pain and discomfort, so if a behavior helps you avoid something bad, you'll be more likely to do it. Positive punishment, adding something bad to decrease a sleep and friendly behavior. Examples: if you scroll TikTok past your bedtime, you'll get eye strain, a headache, or feel more anxious. All bad things we're adding. If you drink coffee after 2 p.m., you'll lie awake at night, tossing and turning. Bad thing. Positive punishment works, but it's less effective than reinforcement because it can make you feel bad about yourself. It's better to focus on rewarding good behavior than punishing bad behavior. Kindness works better than criticism, even with yourself. Negative punishment, taking away something good to decrease a sleep and friendly behavior. Examples: if you stay up past your bedtime, you lose your late night snack privilege, taking away something good. If you scroll your phone in bed, you lose the ability to listen to your bedtime playlist, taking away something good. Negative punishment is better than positive punishment because it doesn't add something bad, it just takes away a privilege, which is less stressful. For example, if you catch yourself scrolling in bed, say, "Okay, no more playlist tonight because I'm scrolling," and put your phone away. Over time, you'll start to scroll less because you don't want to lose the playlist. One of the best things about operant conditioning is that it's flexible. You can tailor it to your own habits and preferences. If you love snacks, use late night snacks as a reward for sticking to your bedtime. If you love music, use your playlist as a reward. If you hate eye strain, use avoiding that as motivation to turn off your phone. The key is to be consistent. Psychology says it takes about 21 days to form a habit, so give it time. You won't see results overnight, but if you keep at it, your brain will rewire itself and sleep-friendly behaviors will become second nature. Behaviorism is super practical. Teachers use it to motivate students, parents use it to teach kids, even companies use it to motivate employees. Employee bonuses are positive reinforcement. The only downside is it ignores what's going on in your head, but hey, if it works for training your dog to stop chewing your shoes and for training your brain to fall asleep faster, it's worth it. Absorbing this perspective adds a practical tool to your cognitive toolkit, one you can use to build better habits, sleep included, without any extra stress. 2.3 Cognitive perspective. Your brain as a computer. The cognitive perspective is all about how we process information. Think of your brain as a computer, but one that glitches, forgets passwords, deletes files by accident, and sometimes freezes. Cognitive psychologists study attention, memory, language, problem solving, and decision making. All the stuff that makes you go, "Why did I forget my keys?" again, or "Why did I buy that fancy gym membership and never go?" Unlike behaviorists, they care about what's going on inside your head, and their insights can help you sleep better and boost your cognitive skills. We'll take it slow, with lots of examples, so it's easy to follow even as your eyes get heavy. Let's start with attention, our ability to focus on one thing while ignoring others. Attention is like a spotlight. It shines on what's important and dims what's not. But our spotlight is small. We can only focus on a few things at once. That's why it's hard to watch TV, scroll your phone, and talk to someone at the same time. Your brain can't handle all that input. For bedtime, This means avoiding multitasking before bed. If you're scrolling your phone while listening to music while trying to fall asleep, your brain is overloaded, your attention is split, and you can't relax. The fix? Single tasks. Focus on one calm activity before bed, like listening to this lecture, reading a physical book, or breathing deeply. This lets your brain wind down because it's not trying to juggle multiple things. It's a simple hack, but it works. Your brain needs a break from constant stimulation to fall asleep. Another cognitive concept, schemas, mental shortcuts that help you make sense of the world. Schemas are like templates or scripts that you develop through experience, and they let you quickly understand new situations by drawing on past knowledge. For example, you have a schema for a coffee shop. You walk in, smell coffee, order at the counter, wait for your drink, pay, and leave. You don't have to relearn this every time you go to a new coffee shop. Your schema does the work. Schemas are great for saving brain energy, which is good for sleep. By the way, less mental effort equals easier relaxation, but they can also make you biased. If your schema for a lawyer is serious guy in a suit, you might be surprised when you meet a lawyer who wears jeans and tells dad jokes. If your schema for bedtime is scroll phone, watch TV, toss and turn, that's what your brain expects, so it's hard to change. The fix? Rewire your schema for bedtime. Add new .com activities to your bedtime routine, like listening to this lecture, stretching, or reading, and over time, your schema will change. Your brain will start to expect relaxation instead of stimulation. This is how cognitive psychology and behaviorism work together. You use behaviorism to build new habits, and cognitive psychology to change your mental scripts. Memory is another big cognitive topic, and spoiler, our memories are terrible, but that's okay. We're not designed to remember everything. And forgetting is actually a good thing. It keeps our brains from getting cluttered. Cognitive psychologists split memory into 3 main stages, each with its own job: sensory memory, short-term memory, working memory, and long-term memory. Let's break them down with sleep connections. Sensory memory. This is the first stop for information from your senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. It holds information for a fraction of a second, like seeing a light flash and still seeing it for a split second, or hearing a sound and still hearing it. Sensory memory is super short because we don't need to remember everything, only the stuff that's important. For bedtime, sensory memory helps you notice calm cues: the softness of your pillow, the warmth of your blanket, the sound of this voice. These sensory cues tell your brain, it's safe, it's time to relax. Short-term memory, working memory. This is where information goes if you pay attention to it. It holds about 7 items, plus or minus 2 for 15 to 30 seconds, unless you actively rehearse it. For example, remembering a phone number long enough to dial it, or remembering what someone just said in a conversation. Short-term memory is limited. You can't hold too much info here, which is why it's hard to remember a long list of tasks or a complicated story before bed. That's why we're keeping this lecture simple, short sentences, easy examples, no complicated ideas. We don't want to overload your short-term memory because that would keep you awake. Here's the sleep hack. If you're lying in bed thinking about all the things you have to do tomorrow, write them down before bed. This moves the information from your short-term memory to a piece of paper, freeing up space in your brain. Your brain doesn't have to hold on to those thoughts anymore, so it can relax and fall asleep. Long-term memory, this is the brain's hard drive. It can hold an unlimited amount of information for an extended period, from minutes to a lifetime. Long-term memory is split into 2 parts: explicit memory and implicit memory. Explicit memory is stuff you can consciously remember, like facts: the capital of France is Paris, events your last birthday, or these psychology facts you're learning now. Implicit memory is stuff you do without thinking, like tying your shoes, riding a bike, or typing on a keyboard. You don't have to remember how to do these things. Your body just does it. Here's the biggest sleep connection. Your brain consolidates memories while you sleep. That means the stuff you're learning right now, the psychology theories, the sleep hacks, the life wisdom is getting stored in your long-term memory as you drift off. You're literally growing your knowledge while you rest. This is why cramming for a test all night is a bad idea. Your brain can't consolidate the information if you're not sleeping. But listening to this lecture before bed is perfect. Your brain has time to process and store the information while you sleep, so you'll remember it better, even if you nod off halfway through. Ever walked into a room and forgotten why you're there? That's called the doorway effect, and it's a quirk of memory. Cognitive psychologists think it happens because your brain uses context to store memories. When you walk through a doorway, you change context, and your brain resets your short-term memory. It's not just you, our brains are terrible at holding on to small bits of info, especially when the context changes. Knowing this takes the pressure off. You're not losing your mind when you forget things. It's just how your brain works. This can help you relax at bedtime because you won't stress about forgetting the things you're learning or the tasks you have to do. Problem solving and decision making are also cognitive classics. We all solve problems every day, from figuring out how to get to work when the bus is late to deciding what to eat for dinner, the hardest decision of the day. The problem? We're not as rational as we think we are. Cognitive biases, systematic errors in thinking mess us up all the time, and they can keep us awake at night. Let's talk about a few common cognitive biases that affect sleep and how to overcome them. Confirmation bias. This is the tendency to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs and ignore information that contradicts them. For example, if you think I'm a bad sleeper, you'll focus on the nights you can't sleep and ignore the nights you sleep well. This makes you feel worse, which makes it harder to sleep. The fix: keep a sleep journal, even a simple one. Write down when you go to bed, when you fall asleep, when you wake up, and how you feel. This gives you objective data. You'll see that you sleep well more often than you think, which challenges your belief that you're a bad sleeper. Over time, your belief will change and you'll feel less stressed about sleep. Availability heuristic. This is the tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easy to recall. For example, if you saw a news story about a plane crash, you might think plane crashes are common, even though they're rare. For sleep, this means if you had one bad night of sleep, you might think, I'll never sleep well again, because that bad night is easy to recall. The fix: remind yourself of all the good nights of sleep you've had. Think about a time when you fell asleep easily and woke up feeling rested. This balances out the availability heuristic and helps you realize that one bad night doesn't define your sleep. Catastrophizing. This is the tendency to imagine the worst case scenario. For example, if you're lying awake at night, you might think, I'll be tired tomorrow, I'll mess up my presentation, I'll get fired. It's a chain of negative thoughts that spirals out of control. The stress keeps you awake, which makes you tired, which makes the spiral worse. The fix: practice cognitive restructuring, challenge those negative thoughts. Ask yourself, is this realistic? What's the most likely thing to happen? Can I handle it if it does happen? For example, instead of thinking, I'll mess up my presentation, think I might be tired, but I've given presentations before and I'll do my best. This calms your brain down so you can fall asleep. These cognitive biases are normal, we all have them, but knowing about them helps you recognize when your brain is taking shortcuts and you can make calmer, smarter decisions. For bedtime, this means choosing to turn off your phone instead of scrolling, choosing to write down your to-do list instead of worrying about it, and choosing to be kind to yourself instead of catastrophizing. This isn't just psychology, it's life wisdom that helps you sleep better and think clearer, even if you're half asleep. 2.4 Biological perspective. Brains, genes, and neurotransmitters. Sleep science light. The biological perspective is all about the why behind behavior. Why do some people get anxious easily? Why are some people morning people and others night owls? Why do some people sleep like logs while others toss and turn? Blame biology, sort of. This perspective says the mind and body are one. Your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all products of electrical and chemical signals in your brain and nervous system. Thanks to modern neuroscience, we can actually see what's happening in the brain when we think, feel, or sleep. It'll keep it light, simple, and sleep-friendly, so it doesn't overload your brain before bed. This is the 10% sleep science we promised you, enough to tie psychology to your bedtime routine, boosting your knowledge and your sleep. Let's start with the nervous system, the body's communication network, and it's directly linked to sleep. It's split into two main parts: the central nervous system, CNS, and the peripheral nervous system, PNS. The CNS consists of the brain and spinal cord. They're the boss, the control center. The brain processes all the information from your body and the environment, and the spinal cord carries messages between the brain and the rest of your body. When you're sleeping, the CNS slows down. Generally, your brain isn't processing as much information, your spinal cord isn't sending as many messages, and everything calms down. The PNS connects the CNS to the rest of your body, all the nerves in your arms, legs, hands, feet, organs, and skin. It's the messenger system, and it has two jobs: sending information from your senses to the CNS sensory neurons, and sending information from the CNS to your muscles and glands motor neurons. For example, when you feel the softness of your pillow sensory input, sensory neurons send that message to your brain, and your brain sends a message back via motor neurons to relax your shoulders' motor output. The PNS is split into two subsystems: the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system controls voluntary movements, things you choose to do, like adjusting your blanket, turning off the light, or rolling over in bed. The autonomic nervous system controls involuntary functions, things your body does on its own without you thinking about it, like heart rate, breathing, digestion, and you guessed it, sleep. The ends is where the sleep magic happens, because it has two modes: sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight mode. It revs you up, gets your body ready to respond to danger or stress. When you're stressed, scared, or busy, your sympathetic system kicks in, your heart rate speeds up, your breathing gets faster and shallower, your muscles tense up, your pupils dilate, and your body releases stress hormones like cortisol. This is great if you're being chased by a bear, but not so great before bed. The parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest mode. It calms you down, gets your body ready to relax and recharge. When you're falling asleep, your body shifts from sympathetic to parasympathetic mode. Your heart rate slows down, your breathing gets deeper and slower, your muscles relax, your pupils constrict, and your body releases calming hormones like melatonin. This shift is what makes you feel drowsy and ready to sleep. Knowing this helps you recognize when your body is ready to sleep and when it's not. If you're lying in bed with a racing heart, tense muscles, and shallow breathing, your body is still in sympathetic mode. The fix: do something to trigger the parasympathetic system. Slow, deep breathing is the easiest way. We'll practice that later. Other things that help: gentle stretching, warm bath. The warm water relaxes your muscles and triggers the parasympathetic system. Or drinking a warm cup of herbal tea, no caffeine. This is the perfect blend of knowledge and action, learning about your body while helping it relax, all while your brain soaks in these gentle lessons. As we wrap up this first Living-ology bedtime psychology class, let's take a slow, deep breath together. Inhale through your nose for 4 counts, hold for 2, and exhale through your mouth for 6. Feel that's your body shifting into that calm, restful state we talked about earlier. Over the past 120 minutes, we've wandered through the history of psychology, from Plato and Aristotle's ancient debates to Wundt's first lab, from behaviorism's simple rewards to Freud's unconscious musings, from cognitive biases to the biological rhythms that guide our sleep. We've turned big ideas into soft, sleep-friendly chats, and you didn't have to lift a finger. Just lie back, listen, and let your brain do the work. Remember, the goal tonight wasn't to memorize every theory or term. It was to nourish your brain with gentle knowledge while easing your body into rest. Every bit of what we talked about: classical conditioning for better sleep habits, cognitive restructuring to quiet nighttime worries, the parasympathetic system's calming magic will stick with you, even if you nod it off for a few minutes. Your brain consolidates these lessons while you sleep, turning them into tools you can use tomorrow and the next night and every night after. Psychology isn't just a textbook subject, it's a story of you. Why you feel the way you feel, why you do the things you do, and how you can work with your brain, not against it, to live a calmer, more intentional life. And tonight, we started that story with kindness. Kindness to your tired body, kindness to your wandering mind, kindness to the parts of yourself that are still learning. As you drift deeper into sleep, let go of any remaining tension in your shoulders, your jaw, your hands. Let the sound of your own breathing be your guide, slow and steady. If thoughts pop up about today, about tomorrow, about anything at all, just let them float by, like leaves on a gentle stream. You don't have to hold on to them. You don't have to fix anything right now. This is your time to rest, to recharge, and to let the knowledge we've shared settle into your bones. Thank you for joining me tonight on this quiet journey into the mind. I'm so glad we got to chat like old friends under the covers with nothing but calm and curiosity. Next time, we'll dive deeper into emotions and social psychology, more gentle lessons, more sleep-friendly hacks, more opportunities to learn while you dream. For now, though, just be here. Be present in this soft, quiet moment. Let your eyes close fully, let your body sink into the bed, and know that you're exactly where you need to be. Sweet